for the Fresno chapter of the San Francisco Racing Sports Car Club of America. It is the club with the longest name and the shortest tracks. So you can't see how far it is here, but it's not the largest autocross, but it's super fun. We have a great time out here, and I guarantee we're all going to learn an enormous amount. If you guys can't hear me in the back, don't be shy, come on forward. I got a few things to show you on the board, so you might not be able to see it from that far back. If you want to stay back there, I won't take offense. I do have bad breath. It's all good. So, my name is Rob Kreider. I own Double Decline Motorsports. I like to party and race cars, just like all of you do. I started in autocross, just like a lot of folks here who it's their first time ever, and you're at the right place. Because one, we're going to do a couple things today. One is we're going to have fun, for sure. We're going to be safe, and we're going to learn a lot about vehicle dynamics, car control, because I will tell you, this is a learned sport. So some people think like, well, you know, if you're Michael Schumacher or Max Verstappen, you're basically a born race car driver. The reality is that's just not true. It is a learned sport. Even the pros have their own coaches. They practice all the time. They continue to go to schools. I've been to a number of racing schools across the country, and I can tell you, every single time you go to one, you will learn something else, and you will improve yourself. So even the folks that are here, and there's a lot of talent standing in front of me here, that have done this sport for a long, long time, I assure you, you'll pick something up today, and you will learn. So the reality is this: when it comes to men, we overestimate two things: our ability to make love and drive cars. Okay?
Yeah,
the reality is,
that.
you have to Kreider, not so good, right? You have to actually learn and practice. So we are here to learn. So if you have the learning mindset, you're going to be good to go. So I spoke with Christian Horner this morning on the phone. He's in England. He is the team principal for Team Red Bull F1 team. Unfortunately, they were not able to send a scout to the Fresno fairgrounds this morning. So none of us are going to get picked up. I'm sorry. None of us are going to get signed to Red Bull F1. It's not going to happen. So good news. The pressure's off, right? You do not have to do well today. You can just learn, because none of us are going to get signed. Christian said he's sorry. Maybe next year we'll make it happen for us. At least, I appreciate. At least he took the call. Right? For sure. All right. So a couple things. We're going to talk about some safety stuff. So a lot of folks know that in autocross we do use helmets. So they have what's called a Snell certification, and that's not like smell, like smell. It's Snell. So Pete Snell, he basically crashed in 1956, rolled over a sports car and died, sadly. A lot of his friends, like a lot of sports car racers, were doctors and engineers, and so they decided in 1957 to start the Snell Memorial Foundation, where they basically certify helmets and make them safer and better. And every 5 years, they come out with basically a newer version. So what you'll see is basically, this is hard to see, but there's a kind of orange sticker in here, has the Snell logo on it, and it says 2015. So this helmet's like 5-7 years old. Any helmet that's a 2010 or newer, you can get a 10, a 15, or a 20, you can use it with us. If it is an M rated, that's for motorcycles, we will allow a Snell M rated helmet. If it's a Snell SA rated, SA stands for special application, that is just race cars, we obviously allow that. So this is a basic, this is a $200 helmet you can get from Airport Racing Supplies. It's very easy to use, you can see out of it. If you want to get crazy and do all the super, whiz-bang race car driver nerd stuff, you really don't need this setup for autocross. So comms and water and air and all this stuff and Hans device, it's just not really utilized and needed for this. To be honest, open face helmet is like the greatest thing out here. It is called a crash helmet. I have never used this autocross helmet for its intended purpose, crashing, right? This I have used numerous times. This has been on fire, I've crashed in it. It's not, you need a little more stuff for little racing. But for us, I would say don't look too crazy with all that stuff. Really easy to use. When we're out here, for the school today, it's not as important, but for tomorrow for event number 1, which you're all invited to, we're going to compete. So we're going to race against each other, and when we do that, we get very specific about the time, right? So we want to make sure that if you're the driver, we're going to give you credit for your time. So we're going to have a number on your car and your class. So a lot of people just use blue painter tape on the side. There's nothing fancy out here. As long as we can see at the trailer and the starter that you are car number 3 in class BS B3, then we'll know what you're doing. A lot of those in the club just basically use a magnet and they just throw this on the side of the car. So they don't cruise down Blackstone like this, but they get here, they slap this on the side of the car, and then we can easily see, nice and contrast, black and white, any color you want. your class and color. So that's something you can do. You can pick that up from Solo Time. I think Autocross Digits is a group that sells these things online. You can go to the sign shop locally, Fast Signs have them made up. Price is $100. It's super easy to do. So that's something I recommend, so that we always want to give you credit for who you are out there and help us. So when you're driving in performance driving, one of the things I want to talk about is your seat position, okay? You really want to be in control of the car. So doing the whole cruise down Blackstone, gangster lean is not really what we're looking for here. So usually the seat's going to be pretty upright and really close to the pedals, because you really want to be able to articulate how you move the steering wheel and the pedals without having to really exert yourself, because it gets very hectic out here. I mean, it's going to be an adrenaline rush. So I know that Brandon said that we don't do any drugs or alcohol here. He is a liar. We do the drug of adrenaline all the time out here. That is what we're here for. It's super, super fun. When you have a good run and you're jacked up, you'll get out of the car, I guarantee you your hands will be shaking just from the adrenaline, and that's really a fun rush. This is an extremely safe environment to do that in. So, seat position is pretty key in helping you be more productive in the car. You don't want to be using your body to kind of hold you in place. You want your seatbelt holding in place, and then letting your arms and legs do less stuff and more articulation of the wheel and pedals and being very smooth, and we'll talk about why that is. So, when I kind of talk about that adrenaline, we basically need to recognize that there's going to be a point out there where you have just like the horns going and windshield wipers are turning on and you're just elbows and fists because it's kind of coming at you super fast. That's totally normal. And you're probably doing it right because you're having a good time out there. But at any time when that happens, if you get lost on the course and you're not sure what's going on or you see a red flag, I want you to stop immediately. And this is just for everybody's safety, right? Because remember, today is just a school. We're not timing anything, so we're just here to learn and get better. And we all will do that today. But if you get lost, just stop. Stopping is never gonna be a problem. Autocross is one car on the track at a time for a reason, right? We don't want to be crashing. We have some really nice cars out here. Nobody wants to see them get damaged. So we set this thing up so that there will be no car damage. Very, very rarely I've ever seen anybody hit something. If they do, they just got lost and hit a light pole or something, but we designed the courses to avoid that situation. So if you go off track, you should not contact anything. However, if you get a little wonky out there, and that's if you should be pushing it to do that, stop. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we got two pedals here. We got the gas, which I call the happy pedal, right? We always want to be on the gas. That's where the fun is. We want to go fast. But the brake is really what we're going to do. Brake will save our lives out here. So please don't be afraid to utilize it. There's nothing embarrassing about it. If you stop, we'll come up and say, hey, what's going on? You say, hey, I got lost. I'm not sure where the course is, which can happen in autocross because it's just a sea of orange cones. And so it kind of takes a while to learn what these tracks look like. Because right now you look out there and it's just fog and orange. And if I was asking, like, do you know where to go? I don't know where to go right now. It's very confusing. So we'll walk the courses beforehand to kind of learn them. So use your brake. For those of you who use manual, which we call the millennial anti-theft device, manual transmissions, we want to go both feet in. So when I say that, essentially, if you're panic stopping, which is okay to do, you want to hit the brake and the clutch at the same time, just to disengage the motor from the actual tires, so you're not just inadvertently running over cones and people. Cones are okay to hit, people not so. So, both feet in the same channels. Please, if you get lost out there, you'll hear me say both feet in, and utilize that for our safety. So a couple things I want to talk about is some nomenclature stuff. So gas, 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 you're going to talk about that. Brake as well, both feet in. And then when you start talking about corners, we're going to use certain terms like high entry and apex. So you guys have probably heard what apex is, essentially. As you have a curve, like this is a curve right here, and apex is essentially the geometric center point of that corner. And we utilize that a lot when we're talking about racing because as we're driving through there, we'll say, hey, give me your high entry, touch the apex, and then a high exit. The reason for that is, as you see, the radius of this corner is kind of tight. But if you drive using basically the straightest line you can get through a corner, you can go faster. Anytime you're in a car, you're utilizing certain friction on the side of the tires. and the straighter the track is, the faster you go. So we basically try to cheat, right? This is a tight corner, but we cheat that corner by utilizing a basically straight possible line, high entry, apex. Now in an autocross, this is what you might see on the road, right? You're driving to north and length. However, on autocross, you don't have that. What you have is just these orange cones. And so you sort of have to visualize this corner. You'll only see maybe 3 cones that matter to you. So as I'm coming through this corner right here, I'm paying attention to the outside cone, that's my high entry. I'm looking for the apex cone, which is kind of my geometric center point, and then my high exit cone. So even though there's cones on the outside here, what my eyes are looking at is basically the cones that matter to me, right? Because a lot of the cones do not matter. So let's do a little exercise right now in regards to our vision. So one of the things you're going to hear over and over and over again is eyes up, eyes up, eyes up. So the reason for that is you have this thing called foveal vision, right? So as you look through your eye, or you guys are looking at me right now, you see me and you're kind of filling in the blanks as to what, you got this green thing above us and chairs behind me. The reality is you really only see about this much for real. And the rest is what your brain kind of remembers. And so what you look at specifically is what you will really recognize. Peripheral vision is very blurred. Stuff can come at you, you won't really recognize what it is. So with that understanding, if you're looking up, okay, you can see a far distance. And everything down the road and to you, you can see. So let's do an exercise right now. Everybody turn around and look down here. You're gonna see like these big poles and like, I don't know, like a tower with some burgundy stuff on the top, a gold. So as you're staring at that, you can see that, then you can see the green box, then you can see the rocks, and you can see the opening. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look down at your feet, okay? Now, as you're staring at your feet, all you can see is your toes and a little bit of the concrete, but you cannot see that tower anymore, okay? But if you raise your hands back, eyes back up at that tower, you see the tower, but you can also see the sidewalk all the way up to just almost your feet, which means the farther ahead you look, the more information you're bringing in. Why this is so important is when you're going 60 miles an hour, that's 90 feet per second, okay? It takes 1.5 seconds for you to perceive and react to stuff. There's been a lot of human testing on this. Yes, Max Verstappen is probably a little quicker, but the reality is the average person, we're just human beings, we have so much ability to do things, it takes us 1.5 seconds to do that. So if we're driving down the street and we see a kid running out the street chasing a soccer ball, our eye looks at that soccer ball, sees the kid, and thinks, register, danger, this is not good. Then you have to make a decision. Will I kill this kid, or should I try to stop him? You're like, I'm gonna stop, I'm a good person. So you decide, I'm gonna use stop now. Now I have to get my foot off of the gas, move it over, cover the brake pedal, press the brake pedal. That brake pedal has to push hydraulic pressure through the whole lines of the car, squeeze the brake pads, slow the rotors down, that has to roll the tire patch, and slow the car down. All that has to happen. It takes about 1.5 seconds. So you're asking me, who cares how long it takes? Here's why. Remember, 60 miles an hour, 90 feet per second. In a second and a half, you go 135 feet. Okay, 135 feet is about to the, I would say probably the end of this deal right here, right? I've covered that distance before I can do anything about it. I can't slow down, avoid something. I've already covered that distance. You start going faster and faster, that feet per second is longer and longer, which means you need to have a higher and higher visual horizon, eyes up, so you can recognize these things. In racing, as we're driving around these cones, we're looking for the cones that matter. So we're like, okay, I don't care about this cone, this cone, this cone. These are kind of keeping on course a bit, but really I care about this one and I care about this one. And so as I'm coming into the corner, I'm eyes up and doing this. You're gonna hear me say it over and over again. And I was just recently at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Club course, and the instructor's like, eyes up, eyes up. I'm like, man, I tell people eyes up. You tell me eyes up for shit. But the reality is that we all have to kind of remember, you have to continually train yourself to have a high visual horizon. Looking at the end of your hood of your car is not gonna help you out. So it's just a thing you kind of train yourself on. And then one thing to watch for is this. When you see a really good driver out there, you'll see them going to the corner and the helmet's looking out, the windshield right, and as they get near the corner, you'll see the person just whack their head like this. And as they're driving into the corner, they're completely looking the other direction. That's a driver who's looking ahead, really far ahead. You can really watch when you're working the course tomorrow in the race. You'll see the people like, this guy just really cranked his head because he's looking through the side window for the next cone. So that's a person using really good high visual horizon. That's something we all want to work on. It will definitely, the number one thing will make you a better driver. And anyone who rides motorcycles here, you know, you basically go to exactly what you look at. As soon as you look at something, you'll go right to it, right? So if you're sliding and you're looking at the wall, look away, go the other direction. Try to get away. Okay. Oh, let's talk one thing real fast here. It's kind of hard to see here, but I have some cones that are standing up. That's a little square with a dot. But I also have these cones like this. So you have a cone that's standing up. You have a cone that's turned to the side next to a cone. That's what basically we call a pointer cone, and we refer this to as a gate. So as you're coming through the track, and you have two cones pointing in next to pointer cones, you know, like, okay, I'm going to go through this gate. So it's really just a gateway for you on track to know where you should be. So you're kind of like, well, I think I'm lost. Oh, I see a gate. Great. Go through that gate and look for the next feature on the track and get through it. So remember, largest radius. Okay, a couple of nomenclature things we're going to talk about. You hear a lot of your truckers say today is understeer, oversteer, or neutral. So what understeer is, and this is how generally most cars are built. So if you're running a stock car, it came from the manufacturer, they essentially designed the car with some understeer in it, because essentially, as you're turning the corner, and you want to go this hard right, essentially your front tires kind of lose adhesion, and you kind of go straight. So you might not go just straight into fence, but you definitely aren't turning as much as you'd like to. So you might have a lot of steering input on the wheel, but the car is still sort of going semi-straight, and that's problematic, because essentially the car is not doing what you want to. And that is the frustration of autocross. The car is not doing what you want it to do. And you have to find ways to work around that, right? So we can do that with car setup, driver input, all kinds of things, throw the car into the corner. There's lots of different ways to get the same thing done. But understand that if your car is, we call pushing, which is the same term for understeer, you are trying to turn right or left, and you just quite aren't getting that radius. The opposite of that, understeer, is called oversteer, right? So essentially, you decide you want to turn to the right, and your front tires take a nice tight radius. Your rear tires decide, I'm not down for that. I'm not going to go that same radius, and it takes a larger radius, which sends you into a spin. Okay? Now it looks cool on YouTube, but ultimately not very fast around the racetrack, and it's very difficult to come back. So if you do feel a situation where your vehicle is oversteering, all you have to do is essentially off the gas, turn into the skid. Okay? You may have been told like, oh no, I know I'm gonna just hang on the throttle, be on the happy pedal, and just counter steer and just smoke the tires off. Yeah, if you're drifting, but the reality is that out here, you just want to save it. So just off the gas, turn in, and immediately you'll feel the car snap back. Then over time, you start to say like, I want a little more throttle or whatever, that's fine. But the reality is, oversteer situation, a little scarier, a lot more fun, but definitely not faster on the track, and the way to deal with that is counter steer. When I say counter steer, it means that if I'm sliding, my butt is going to the left, I'm turning into it, right? If my butt's going to the right, I'm turning into it. That's what counter steer is. That comes with just like practice. It's sort of like natural, like, oh my gosh, ability. Good race car drivers, they got nice rumps on them. These should be good drivers. Neutral is when, which never happens, by the way. Neutral is a car that's perfectly aligned and set up, the tire pressure's right, and all the things you want. So when you tell the car, I want to go through this corner as fast as I can, it just does what you tell it to do. Turns out cars generally don't do what you tell them they want to do. They want to fight you, they want to frustrate you, and so the goal here as a race car driver is like, okay, what can I do to trick this car, go through this track as fast as I can. So for steering, you're going to hear me talk about a couple things, fast hands and slow hands, right? So fast hands is good for catching stuff. So if you are in an oversteer situation, right, you want a quick reaction. You want to look at the skid and turn, okay? But that same fast hand stuff will often upset the car, and you'll lose the front end, and you'll lose traction and push. So if you see a really, really good driver, smooth on the inputs. They're very smooth with the wheel. It doesn't have to be, I'm not saying slow, but smooth with the wheel, smooth throttle and brake applications. Some people are just more aggressive. They're throwing the car around, they're tossing it around. I'm one of those people that's super guilty, and then he's already laughing at me because he knows I do this. Super aggressive. And terrible driver. I'm good at lecturing. Don't do what I do on the track. Just listen to what I'm telling you. But basically, fast hand, slow hand. So kind of slow inputs, but fast reactions will help you get through that stuff. In regards to that, let's do this right now. So, when you're talking about how the car works, you can only go so fast through a corner, okay? Because you only have so much adhesion. So basically, think of it this way. This is the throttle pedal, okay, on my right foot. This is the steering wheel. Now, when I'm in the straightaway, I'm on the happy pedal. I am to the wood, right? This string is super taut because I'm going as fast as I possibly can. Now, when I start to steer, I can't go flat through a corner. You will not make it. So you have to get off the gas. So basically, as I turn this wheel, this foot comes up, okay? Now, as I start coming out of the corner, I start taking it out, I start to apply the gas, and I start to unwind the wheel and roll it out, okay? So it's kind of this ongoing thing where as I turn in, I'm off the gas. As I'm coming out of the corner, I don't just wait to get out of the corner and then get the gas. I'm basically coming out of the corner and slowly dropping it back down. So that is just the ability to call rolling on the throttle or unwinding the wheel. Sometimes I'll tell you like, hey, unwind the wheel a little faster. When you're going to the corner, you might be just like, kind of like, you're locked in, just like, ah. But hey, let's unwind that a bit and help you get some traction. We'll talk about why that works too. So just think about that. Turning in wheel position. If you're like this and you're like that, chances are you're an understeer right toward the fence, and there's no points in that. Why that slow hand stuff is important is weight transfer. So as you're racing your car, all the cars out here have springs on them. They do that so when you drive to 7-Eleven, you get yourself a Slurpee, you're not hitting every bump in the road. You're feeling that undulations and it helps the car work. But because these cars are on springs, as you turn to the left, you basically load the right springs and unload the left springs. And so your car starts to lean. Now you only do so much of that from the first left-hand turn. But if you're in a slalom, we're going around a set of cones, back and forth. As you make that right turn, then suddenly you have this weight transfer where you're unloading the sprung spring, reloading the left springs, and things get a little hairier. And then you're going to do it again on the other left. Then things look like this. So you see the car starts to undulate more and more. That's because these springs are loading and unloading on that car. Understanding that will help you understand, why is my car doing this stuff? Like, I know I was going this speed before and I made it, and now I just can't seem to do it. It's because your car has this weight transfer, this moving, the weight of the car around, and the tire can only take so much adhesion. So we'll talk about that. So, that brings in contact patch. This is the tire right here, just like this one right here. But what you actually drive on is a very small amount. So this right here, this little white drawing right here, essentially, this is the tire patch that you have. That's kind of all you're working with. And everything you do on the racetrack, all this stuff, the steering wheel and your helmet and all this stuff, it doesn't really do anything. This does everything. The whole car operates on this little piece of rubber, okay? So why that's important is this changes in shape based on weight transfer, both laterally, side to side, or longitudinally, front and back. So when you jump on the gas of your car, the weight transfers to the back, right? It goes rearward. So that means that the rear tires have more contact patch, kind of expands, and the front tire has less. That's kind of that thing with the steering where I said, hey, you don't have much contact patch in the front, so you start to steer, you're using less and less rubber patch on the wheel, and you have less and less ability to steer. Now, as you start to go left and right, when that weight transfer happens to the right, you'll get a larger contact patch on the right and less on the left. And all this stuff moves around, and basically, essentially, all you're working with is this small patch you have. That brings us to something called the friction circle, okay? As you're working with the contact patch, and essentially, like, just like your foot on the contact patch, we're just gonna move our foot like this. It's got a little sticky, a little slippery. That's all we get. There's no more friction for me than what my body weight is and my shoe. And a tire is the exact same thing. So, as I'm driving along and I have smaller and smaller contact patch, I'll slip faster and faster. So I've got to recognize that, okay, I've got weight transfer in the back, I don't have as much steering, I can only do so much. So that so much is the maximum ability of friction, which is the interface between two surfaces, the tire and the asphalt surface here, right? That's the friction you're working with. I only go what I call the outside of the surface. So like, let's say we're using a friction value of 1. So this is 1 longitudinally, 1 laterally. That's as much as I can get. My foot or the tire and the rubber, and that's it. Now, it is a circle because if you know anything about geometry, you only get so much longitudinal, so much lateral. If you add the two together, you sum them together, you're outside the circle. So there's no more math on this, I promise. So here's the deal. If you're on the gas and you're using a lot of frictional force longitudinally, and then you start to turn, you will go outside the circle. Okay? If you're on the brakes, which really ABS braking pushes you really close to that one friction level, you're really on the kind of like threshold braking. Well, if you start steering, you will push the lateral force out and you will go outside the circle. What do you think happens if you go outside the circle? You slide, right? You have lost the ability to control the car anymore because essentially you are sliding. It's super fun, but the reality is that it's not helping you. So that whole concept of the steering wheel and the string, that is the friction circle. It's more of a scientific version of it. In that I know, like, okay, if I'm using all of my friction for braking right now, I'm going to do so much turning, right? So a lot of racing schools will tell you, like, let's do straight line braking versus trail braking. So trail braking is a term for using the brakes while steering. And so some people do it a little more advanced. It's not really necessary. It depends on kind of what you're doing, or your car may ask you to do it. But we'll start off today with some real simple straight line braking, and then we'll kind of work our way up to trail braking because it might be better for your car if it's all-wheel drive, front wheel drive, whatever. We'll kind of work with you to figure that out. But really understand the concept of why this is important, what can it do to help you make it faster. That is weight transfer and friction circle. Okay, so all the stuff we're talking about here is based on this guy. It's a friend of mine, his name is Isaac. So Isaac came up with these 3 principles. His name is Isaac Newton, okay? So the first, good friend. So the first rule is this: an object at rest will remain at rest until acted by an outside force, right? So your car's going to sit there until something pushes it along. Or if you're going a straight line, uniform line, you will not do anything until you act by outside force. Now that's rule number 1 from Isaac Newton. Rule number 2 is what that force is equal to the mass of the object and the acceleration, times acceleration. So the mass is just your car's weight, your weight, divided by gravity, and the acceleration is your ability for your engine to push you along, right? And the last rule from Isaac is every action is equal to opposite reaction. So as you're driving your car, no matter what you do, Isaac is in charge. We cannot defy physics out here. We have to work with the rules of physics and how that tire patch works, how our steering input works to really make us faster on track. So it is a little bit weird concept, but it all comes together. We're basically fighting those rules of physics to make ourselves as fast as we can go. So remember that, and Isaac, he's taking good care of you. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up pretty soon here. So, traction control, ESC, ABS, these are things that really help you not crash your car when you're going 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee, but they sometimes limit us out here. So the instructors will work with you if you want to, and will turn any of those driver aids off. Mostly traction control and ESC, which is electronic stability control. Those things are designed so when you're driving to Disneyland with your family and you fall asleep and you still lose control, you don't roll over and crash. But they basically hinder our ability to drive a car at its maximum potential, 10/10ths, okay? So we will usually, in autocross, we turn all that stuff off, and it helps us really feel what the car does. As we're learning today, I want you to know what is what I'm doing behind the wheel affecting this car versus what is the car sort of doing for me, right? Computers are fast, they're smarter than us, but really for racing, these parameters are set up for street driving, and we're gonna be doing performance driving today. So we will be turning those things off if you're comfortable with it. Trust me, it's definitely more fun, and you'll get to feel what the car's doing, and you'll be out. We'll probably turn that stuff off. Today we're gonna go fast, have fun, be safe, and slay cones. So here's the thing. These cones are basically setting up to lose their lives to us today. They're here just for that reason, right? So a lot of people are scared of the cones sometimes. I assure you, they will not harm your car. It waxes right off. I've hit hundreds of them. In fact, people will make fun of me because I hit them all the time. But that's just part of autocross. Like essentially, if you are pushing it, you're gonna hit some cones. You're gonna touch cones. That's a normal thing. So I talk about shaving the orange off the cone, right? You want to get so close to the cone, you want to turn that cone white, right? So you want to get right by it, just barely missing it. And if you do it right, it looks like this. It should be scared of you as you're going around the cone. It should be like, oh my gosh, you missed it. So that is this for that. We're gonna have a good time. So Autocross is, in my opinion, a very aggressive sport. It takes a certain amount of aggression. Okay? We talked about being smooth, but to be fast, it takes some aggression. Have some fun out of it. So this is the place to push yourself, have a great time. Let's push that aggression. Let's shave the orange off those cones. Let's have a great time. So, anybody have any questions? Nope, didn't think so? All right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm joking. Does anybody have a question? Honestly, I will answer it. All right, so we have 5 groups, 10 instructors, 2 apiece. So group 5, be hanging out right here. Come hook up with us really fast, rest of your groups. Have a great time today. We're gonna have super fun. Welcome to Fresno SCCA. And today, we'll be fast for it.
I need another quarter-inch. the number 2 cone, you kissed it and it rotated. The number 4, you grabbed it and it just ever so slightly wobbled and it finally fell over. Nice.
Gotta go harder.
Congratulations, you found the limit.
Mikey's getting that thing sideways. Dude! Yeah! Woo!
Right on.
1, 2, 3.
And that, kids, is how it was done.
Ha 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 ha!